Hawk,
Yes. One of our great sponsors of our coverage in anytime we've been to the Super Bowl has been U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company with Captain Kai Kizzy. And this is a great segment to have with, of course, U.S. Army Green Beret Nate Boyer, former Texas, always a current former University of Texas football player. We've had you on many times. How
Yes,
you
sir.
been? How's life?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well. Doing
awesome.
really well.
I just realized that you are probably one of the only people on earth that you are a Texas Longhorn and also part of a 12th man.
They call it the 12s.
Yes,
the
because
12s.
A&M pulled the rug out from under them on that one.
Yeah, that's right. They had it licensed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And on another interesting note, I played. So now, Texas is obviously moving to the SEC, and we're going to play A&M again every year, which we have to do. But the last game Texas played against A&M was in 2012 at Kyle Field.
Yep.
And it was the only time when I was at Texas that I got to play against them, right? So I'm on the sideline, standing there in uniform, and all of a sudden I hear this very familiar song that the A&M band is playing. They were playing the Ballad of the Green Beret. Mm-hmm. And for a split second, in all my arrogance, I was like, oh, they're playing this for me. No, it's the Cadets. It's just one of the songs the bands play. But they had no idea there's a Green Beret on the field. The only one on the field is wearing burnt orange.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That game will always stick out in my memory because A&M had it won essentially and then made some really dumb penalties. I think was it Johnny Jolly that hit Case so far out of bounds they could have been getting water together?
They had that. They had there was a head-to-head on a pass to Mike Davis. I don't know if you remember that. It was over his head. It was probably uncatchable. But somebody, helmet-to-helmet got called.
15 yards.
On like 3rd and 17 or something. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, first down. And the rest is history. Justin Tucker from 40 yards. That's where the legend began.
Yeah.
And then Tuck hasn't missed a kick since. You know what I mean?
I don't remember the last time a University of Texas kicker, I'm a lifelong Nebraska fan, and they've daggered them many times, missed a kick when it was a critical moment. There may have been one when they kind of went through this little struggle.
Yeah, but I don't. You might not be wrong. Even then, it was Dicker the kicker.
Dicker the kicker.
To beat,
beat Oklahoma one time, and so you're a veteran of this right now. You've been doing this, the Radio Row, and now what are you working with Jay Glazer? Is that right?
Yeah, on MVP.
Yeah, trying to merge military veterans and athletes from jerseys or what they wore, camouflage, fatigues, whatever, into real life. That's not easy to do. That's a tough transition.
It is a tough transition, and it's like, I think some people think it's a real tough comparison to make when you first hear, because I did. Like, you can't compare war and sports, you know what I mean? But, like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the person who puts that uniform on every day, who sacrifices quite a bit to be elite, who has that camaraderie and mission, and someone that their career typically ends pretty young, and you feel like you'll never be great again. You sort of peaked. That's very similar, And so what we're doing with MVP is we're recreating that locker room, giving them that, I guess, just that community, and reminding them of, like, who they are. Like, they're the person who sacrificed so much to get to that point. They're the person who beat out everybody else. They're the person who didn't quit, And then maybe one day, like me, they did get cut, or their time ended in the military. And you still got a lot of life left, and you're still that person. You're still capable of so much. So it's like, what are you going to do next? Let's figure this out together, walk this walk together, as Jay likes to say. And, just like you didn't do in the military, you didn't do on the football field, which is quit. Like, can't quit now that that's over. There's still a lot of great things you can do.
Day one after a military career and an athletic career is kind of the same thing, because if you're an athlete, everything is structured. Like, there's in the military, it's even more so. Like, you never once had a day as a Green Beret where you woke up in the morning like, hey, what are we doing, Sarge? And like, whatever you want. Yeah. you never.
That's kind of scary. It's like, I say this all the time, but it's like, it's exciting and terrifying at the same time. Yeah. You're like, I can do whatever I want. And then you're just like,
well, I've not done that.
But what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, where do I start? I have too many. It's almost like too many choices and options, and it can be kind of daunting. Like, what if I pick the wrong thing and, spend all this time going down this path and it's not even what I want? And, that's people get anxiety over that. It's a blessing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like that everywhere. We're very lucky to live where we are and have what we have, as imperfect as it is, to have those opportunities. And that's because of, our forefathers that, fought for that stuff. But at the same time, like it's, it can be intimidating just to sit there and think like, well, what? Okay, so I was behind a rifle for 25 years, not me, but like I'm just saying, the typical person that has that long career, or even 5 years, and now it's like, what am I actually good at that I can do in the real world?
Yeah.
Can't do that. You know what I mean? I get, unless you transition into law enforcement or something, but it's like, it's hard to sit there and imagine like where that translates. Same with sports. It's like, well, besides broadcasting, as an athlete, a lot of them think like, what else can I do? All I know is football. And it's just like, no, you know a lot more than you realize.
Paul's father fought on the lines in Vietnam in the Army. My dad was a Naval Academy graduate, never was running the lines, but was at Tan Son Nhut in Vietnam, and he was a part of a couple of wars. But he was a long time career.
Yeah.
Military. He
Right.
struggled. They tried to get insurance. It's not the same. And he really struggled with that. I wish you would have had somebody at that time understand because of the protocol that you have as a military man.
Those guys, I mean, the ones who did the most work for veterans were the Vietnam vets because they were not treated well. Guys came back from World War II, less so in Korea, but in World War II, and they were very much, sort of worshipped and great heroes. And same with
parades.
us. Same with us at some level. Maybe not the parades, but like the thank you for your service thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of that was trying to make up for that guilt of how those Vietnam vets were treated. But even while they were treated like that, they still fought for so many veteran rights and did a lot to get the VA where it is. It's not perfect, but it's way better than it was, in a lot of these organizations.
My dad died almost 9 years ago, but he lived a lot longer because the VA saved his life with PTSD. And so
you gotta dedicate that and thank that's the Vietnam era.
And he after that put a lot of his free time. That was his because he military right to working for a company, and then he was retired. It was really tough for him to be retired, and then when he finally got got help for his PTSD in the VA, he was the guy I knew when I was a kid again, and he had a couple rough years, and then he dedicated all his time to free time to hey, I'm going to help these veterans.
Right.
Also, he knew how to get people to help him build a deck because they're bored at the VA, and he went and said, hey, I need help, building this fence.
Are you talking about a pitch deck on your laptop or a physical deck?
And he had a guy come, and he was a carpenter before he went in the military. His dad was a carpenter, and he knew all that. He went in the military, got hurt, and they had him doing this occupational therapy where he was making bowls and stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna go nuts, and he's like, can I just take him out here and have him hammer some nails that he wants to do? It was great. So
that's very cool.
Nate, how much of what Jay Glazer has publicized, his depression and things like that he's fought, do you think led him to this part of what you guys are doing?
I mean, a great amount. I think a big piece of it's that. Also, he was in New York during 9/11, and so he remembers the jets flying over, and he's like, that's a key memory for him. Because he was afraid. They couldn't find his best friend who had passed. They didn't know that yet, but they were looking for him. But he said he heard those jets and saw those jets fly over, and he was like, "Oh, thank God we're safe." You know what I mean? Just like that feeling of we're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And so obviously the connection with sports, MMA and football.
Sure.
For most of his life, he's worked in that space, and he's very tight with a lot of those players that have struggled. And coaches even that struggled when it ends, because that even more than the military, it's often not on your terms. It's just you're just cut one day,
That's right.
and it just happens, and you're just you're not prepared. If
your phone may not ring again.
No, and if you're thinking about Plan B, you're not focused on Plan A, so it's tough to do that. People are like, oh, you gotta have a backup plan, but I mean, I hear that. But when you're in it, you can't think that way, or the backup plan's gonna be happening sooner than it should.
I've heard players say that if you ever think about retirement, you are retired.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. You played for Mac Brown.
Yep.
Who is still going at North Carolina.
Yeah.
And still very Mac Brown.
Yep.
Love Mac Brown.
Love Mac.
And you also played for Pete Carroll, who is now. He's having to do a little of that.
If I played for the two coaches that coached against each other in probably the greatest college football game
perhaps,
ever, at least one of them.
I think
top
so.
five,
Yeah, and individual
championship
performance.
game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Unbelievable.
What is it? I mean, to be a former Pete Carroll player, to think about the Seahawks not being coached by Pete Carroll.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. And I was only there 5 months, right?
Yeah.
I was there OTAs, training camp, preseason, but enough to get a sense of like how it works down there, the culture. And it's very much, and I've been around and spoken to a lot of other teams and been around it at some level. And I don't want to say I know because I was in the locker room for a day or two.
Yeah.
But it was different there. It felt that college culture, you know, that camaraderie, really getting to know your teammates. That was really important to Pete, and it showed. And then like this positive style of coaching, where it's like he went through the stressful, you know, I think the Jets and the Pats, right?
Right.
Where he just was a high stress guy, and it wasn't fun, and he didn't win. And then he went to USC, completely changed his methodology. You know, started working with sports psychologists, and just like, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to feel that way. I want to have fun. This is supposed to be fun. And, you know, it's just sort of transformed the way that he coached and the staff that he built. And then they almost won 3 straight natties. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then he goes to Seattle and builds that. And you know, everything was about competing, yes, but it was like, what I remember is like the only yelling that happened at practice was positive yelling. If somebody screws up, especially at the NFL level.
More reinforcement stuff.
Yeah. And if they screw up at the NFL level, they know they screwed up.
Yeah.
You just like dog cussing them and throwing your hat. It's just going to create more of an animosity. They're going to be playing on their heels now, trying to not make a mistake. Instead, just take that player aside and be like, hey, if you don't fix it, like, you're either not going to play or you're going to be gone. And you know that. So, like, we just got to fix it. You know what I mean? It's that simple. And that's it. And I think that when you respect and treat people that way, because these are men, you know what I mean? Especially at that level. They're making most of them, or not most of them, but a lot of them are making more than you are as a coach. Like, you have to treat them in that manner, I think.
You were one of the last few teams at Texas when they were starting to drop a little bit.
Yeah, we were like 8-5, 9-4 when I was there.
But still winning and getting to bowl games. And then there's been this off and on drought. What are your thoughts about what Steve Sarkisian has done to get him on the precipice of playing for the national title?
I mean, whatever he's done is working because, you know, even last year. So the year one, he comes in 5-7, and everyone's thinking, well, there's same as it's been the last couple guys we've had, right? Which was tough. And the next year, I think 8-5. I think or maybe even 7-6. We lost the bowl game. We lost to Washington. So yeah, not much better, but a little bit better. And they hung in these close games, and you know, kind of won more than the year before, where we lost every close game, right? And then this year, once again, like, it's not like our numbers were off the charts, but we were in a lot more close games, but we like figured out how to win. And there's
Kansas State, Houston.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The only one was
TCU.
Oklahoma. Yeah, TCU, yeah.
And Oklahoma, we should have won.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
We had the ball late down there tied. That was a clock management thing, and I bet Sark would own it. But all we had to do was run the clock out and kick a field goal. And he was trying to go for the, for the jugular, and we gave him too much time. We gave him a minute 20 or something, and they went down and won the game.
The Pete Carroll culture guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he knows it. So
no, but he's he's
Saban. He's at the next level.
So he's doing the result speaks for itself. You take a team to the playoff like that, and you're 4 downs away from going to the championship game, and we didn't even play well against Washington, and we still could have won that game at the end. And that was one of our worst. We looked terrible out there.
Makes them a little hungry during the offseason. And the signing day today to wrap up a great class. Merging vets and players. Jay Glazer, this, of course, Nate Boyer with us on 365 Sports. Go to vetsandplayers.org. Yep. There's a gala coming up in April in Dallas. You want to register for that if you can to be in Dallas. Thank you.
And if you have the opportunity, please watch the MVP movie. So it's available it's on Paramount Plus, it's on Apple TV, it's on Prime. It was my directorial debut.
Awesome.
I shot it 3 years ago in the middle of COVID. It came out last Veterans Day, but it's available streaming now, and it really tells the story of how MVP started. It's about a Marine who was living in a homeless shelter and a former NFL player, first year out of the league, and they're going through those same struggles, trying to figure out who they are. And the cast, besides Jay, Tony Gonzalez, Randy Couture, Michael Strahan, Howie Long, and they all play themselves in this story, kind of telling their own stories. And then all the vets portrayed on screen are played by actual vets. And so it was a really authentic way of making this thing. And it did well. It's doing well. So please go see that movie, because you'll really learn about the genesis of MVP and what we're all about.
Thanks for your time. It's always great to have you. You were on with us when we first started this new show, YouTube, back in April of 2020, one of our first guests. We appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you guys.
Nate Boyer with us. Again, it's